everybody, welcome back to Saturdays Out West, an edition of the Jack Power Show where we cover the Pac-12 conference. Last week I really dove into 4 of the 8 teams in the Pac-12 conference this year. So Washington State, Oregon State, Texas State, and Boise State. Just talked about what the teams can expect, some of the toughest parts of their schedules, easiest parts of their schedules, just some stuff along those lines. And I want to do the same with the remaining 4 today: San Diego State, Fresno State, Utah State, and Colorado State. If you didn't see the first video, make sure to go check that out. So we'll be wrapping up those team previews here today, and then later on this week we'll be getting into win totals, what I expect each team to do, who I expect to win the Pac-12 conference, kind of my predictions for the season. And then after that, we're going to start previewing games week by week and talking about games as they finish up week by week. It's just around the corner this upcoming Saturday. It's the first week, week 0, no Pac-12 games in that week, but games following that. So just so much to get into. I'm excited. Football season is back. Friday night lights are back too. If you're in the high school football, call the game just the other night, Del Norte High School versus Mater Dei. If you don't already know, I do play-by-play broadcasting. It's a huge dream of mine is to make it big in that aspect, but let's get back focused here. A lot to look forward to, and I want to start with my alma mater, San Diego State. I graduated there with a journalism degree, and I love the Aztecs this year. There's so much to talk about. Last year, second year for Sean Lewis, he went 9-4, bouncing back from his 3-9 season he had in year 1 with the Aztecs. But 9-4 would end up losing a bowl game to North Texas without their starting quarterback in that game, Jaden Denegal, and went to their backup, Burt Emanuel Jr., who actually is now a wide receiver for the Aztecs in this 2026 season. But when you look at their schedule on paper, it was really solid. They had some bad losses that I know the Aztecs wish they could have back, but other than that, some great wins. Their bad losses were on the road against Washington State, 36-13, and if you watch that game, it kind of was closer than the score may show. I really think about a blocked field goal that Chris Johnson, who's now in the NFL, returned and would have scored to make that game a little closer. That was called back, and not sure it should have been. You look at the Hawaii game on the road, they got blown out 38-6. Of course, Hawaii was a great team last year too, finishing 7-2, or were 7-2 at that point. And then they lost a really tough-fought game on the road to finish up Mountain West play 23-17, losing in double overtime. And that was the game that kept them out of the Mountain West championship game, which they felt they deserved to be in. So kind of a tough way to end their season. They would play North Texas, losing 49-47. Even had to go to the third-string quarterback, Kyle Crum, in that ball game. But overall, a really, really fantastic season for the Aztecs, and they'll be looking to improve off that. When you hear everybody talk about it within the program, the expectations are Pac-12 championship or bust. Their aspirations are even more than that. I would say even making the college football playoffs is really their aspirations. They think they have the team. I honestly think they have the team to do it this year. And let's just start getting into what this team looks like. So we look at last season, and they lost a few players. Of course, with success, especially at the G5 level, comes with players in this NIL era kind of taking off, coaching changes, guys follow. So they lost some key defensive players. They had the departure of their defensive coordinator, Rob Orch, from last year. He takes the Nebraska DC job. With him, he takes Owen Chambliss, who had a breakout season at the linebacker position, and they lose Dwayne McDougal, the safety, who also followed him there. And then another huge loss they had was Trey White, great edge rusher. He left for Texas Tech. And then, of course, they lose their elite cornerback, Chris Johnson, who got drafted by the Miami Dolphins, and quite the talent he was. They also lose some other key guys who graduated and are playing in the NFL, Bryce Phillips and Eric Butler. So a lot of changes on the defensive side of the ball. But that's what makes me want to go back to the offensive side of the ball real quick. When you look at their offense on paper going into this season, it's almost exactly the same, if not better. Now, Jaden Denegal, it will be in his second year as quarterback with the Aztecs. That is huge for Sean Lewis, who hasn't had a quarterback stay more than a year yet. If you go back to Danny O'Neal in 2024, the true freshman who started with him, and then Jaden Denegal, who came in from Michigan last year, he showed signs of a lot of success But they also showed a lot of signs of struggles on the offensive side of the ball, and that's kind of been the biggest problem for the Aztecs so far in the Sean Lewis era, has been the pass game. So they're looking to build off that. They're keeping Lucky Sutton at running back. Now, Lucky Sutton is going to be a problem in the Pac-12. He's huge. It's hard to tackle the guy. Last year, he had 5 100-yard-plus games, and I see him having more than that this year. He probably, if not is, the best running back in the Pac-12 conference this year. Keep an eye on Lucky Sutton. Jordan Napier returns as a wide receiver along with Donovan Brown and Jacob Bostic. Bostic went down with an injury last year. He's looking to have a big season. They also now have Burt Emanuel Jr. at the wide receiver position. They bring in Justice Lowe from Oregon as a receiver, and Will Sanfrini is also out there, younger guy who has shown a lot of signs of talent. But with Rob Orich leaving, so as we go back to the defensive side of the ball, how do they keep that defensive mindset, that defensive tradition intact at SDSU? Well, they promote Demetrius Sumler, who was the defensive backs coach, up to the defensive coordinator position. He's a San Diego guy. He's coached elite defensive backs in his time, of course, at SDSU. And he has lots of confidence in this Aztecs defense to be successful this year. In a lot of interviews, he's mentioned how the guys who were under guys like Chris Johnson and Bryce Phillips and Eric Butler last year were able to sit back and really gain so much knowledge just watching them. I think of guys like Josiah Cox, Josh Hunter, so many guys on the defensive end of the ball that have a really great chance to be super talented this year and bring key plays to the Aztecs on the defensive side of the ball this year. And they brought in a lot of talent too. I think of Mike Lindsay, Idaho State. There's just so many different guys they brought in. Kai Wallen as an edge rusher from Oregon State. They have the talent to be great across the board on the defensive side of things. So when I look at this, and I look at their 2026 season, what is the best thing about San Diego State going into this year? Well, Lucky Sutton in the running game will be dominant. As always, it truly is always talented and successful at SDSU. You look history-wise, you look at their success running the ball on the ground, and you look at it last year with Lucky Sutton, and you have to imagine that only improves this year. They also have Javion Kennard, who came in from Colorado State as a second back, and Christian Washington as a third, who even played last year. So much to look forward to in the run game this year, and I see it getting even better than it was last year. My biggest concern is, can that passing game be elevated to the next step? I know Sean Lewis wants it to be. I know Jaden Denigal wants it to be. I know the receivers want it to be. Can it be, though? That is the biggest question entering the year. Some may say, I think it should be the defense. I don't think so. Sumler sat under Rob Orich last year. He's seen that defensive scheming. He knows what these guys need to do. The team chemistry is really the biggest part of it on the defensive end. How do you make adjustments mid-game? How do you guys communicate on the field to make sure big plays don't happen against you? And I think that'll be taken care of. I have a lot of faith in Demetrius Sumler getting that done. My biggest concern is just the pass game. If the Aztecs have a pass game this year, which I think they can figure out, but if you look at it on paper, that should be their concern. If they can figure out the pass game, this San Diego State team, I believe, is the team to beat in the Pac-12, without a doubt. If they can fix that, I don't see how a team stops the Aztecs on the offensive side of the ball. The run game is going to be elite. If the pass game is elite as well, teams are in trouble, Now, let's get into their 2026 schedule a little bit, preview some of the toughest games, most important game, their trap game, toughest stretch, and their easiest stretch. I'll put the schedule up on the screen now. First game, Portland State. They should take care of that, right? UCLA, James Madison, Toledo are the rest of their non-conference game. But what is their toughest game? And I'd like to combine that into their most important game as well. And I am going to say Boise State on the road for their final Pac-12 conference game that counts towards the conference standings. This is, of course, before their flex game, which right now would be scheduled against Fresno State on the road. But I have to give it to Boise State right now because it's on the road. Last time they played on the road at Boise State, they got whooped, and I promise you they remember it. Last year they beat Boise State, so Boise State's going to have a chip on their shoulder, but they beat Boise State while the Broncos had a few injuries, as I mentioned in the last video. And before that, you play Utah State, which SDSU looks at as probably a win right now. So you got to travel up there. You know you need to take care of business on the road. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be packed. It's going to be loud. And it could mean a lot towards the Pac-12 conference standings and who is in that Pac-12 championship game and maybe who goes to the college football playoffs. That game, I am putting a big circle around for the Aztecs. Now their trap game, I have to say it's going to probably be Oregon State on the road. Not because I think Oregon State might be the Pac-12 championship contenders this year, but because they're on the road, it's a tough environment. The Beavers, at that point in the season, may be very desperate for a win because they have a very tough non-conference schedule. They might come out of that non-conference 1-3, maybe 2-2, but still, they're going to be fighting for some wins. And that's probably a game Oregon State looks, hey, we can get this back and try and get to SDSU early in Pac-12 play. Their toughest stretch is going to be Fresno State through the Washington State game. Because you just look at it. Fresno State at home. That's their rivalry game. They only call them the team up north for a reason. Then you have to hit the road and play the Rams, coached by Jim Mora. And then you come back home and you got a Wazoo team who has a chance to be good this year. Wazoo, on Halloween night, is not going to be easy. So that, to me, is their toughest stretch. They have a bit of a more favorable schedule, though, when it comes to Pac-12 play. You get Wazoo at home, Fresno State at home, Texas State at home. 3 teams right there that I think could be pretty solid. And then your toughest game is Boise State because it's just on the road, really, and that's probably your most competitive game for the Aztecs when you look at it just scheme-wise, paper-wise, however you may want to look at it based off last year. Their easiest stretch, I think, is the end of non-conference play going in to their first Pac-12 game. So James Madison, yes, JMU made the playoffs. I've heard it a million times. Oh my gosh, it's a tough game. Well, guess what? The whole JMU team left for UCLA, and Billy Napier from Florida took over JMU. Do I think Napier is going to figure it out with JMU year one? Maybe, but it's year one for Billy Napier there. And JMU had a lot of departures, and they got to travel across the country from the East Coast all the way down to San Diego. Doesn't sound fun for JMU, sounds super favorable for the Aztecs. Now, the Aztecs have to hit the road and play Toledo, and the Aztecs the last 2 years have shown signs that playing MAC teams is not the best for them. The last 2 years they were on the road against them, and they were close, low-scoring games. Well, the Aztecs want to probably put up some more numbers on the offensive side against the MAC team this year, and you get a little bit of a favorable draw with Toledo, who isn't going to be easy, but easier. And then you come back home and play Texas State, whose defense has a lot of question marks, but the offense is there. And I think the Aztecs defense could hold up in that game. But that's probably your easiest stretch. One, because JMU, you get at home. Texas State, you get at home. And you get to play a MAC team in between the two on the road. Time still to be determined for that game. So that's my preview of the Aztecs. Can they figure out the pass game? That's the biggest concern to me. Outside of that, the Aztecs, a very, very scary team this season. That's what makes me go over to their rival, Fresno State. Fresno State also, as the Aztecs did, go 9-4 last year. Matt Entz is still the head coach of the program. The coaching staff, for the most part, is still there, which is always good. You like to see that. You look at their schedule last year, they had some really good runs. At one point, they had a 5-game win streak going from Georgia Southern all the way to Nevada. They lost the first game of the year on the road at Kansas. This is a tough game. But then they finish out the year with the bowl game win in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl, 18-3 over Miami, Ohio. And you look at their losses. They lost to San Diego State at home. That's not a loss, on the road. Or no, excuse me. They lost to San Diego State at home, correct? That's not a great loss. They lost to Colorado State on the road last year in a large way, 49-21, and they lost to Utah State at home 28-17. Just games as the Aztecs did last year, just wish they had back. But other than that, for the most part, they look solid. You look at there's a few changes across the board. Fresno State's really kind of known for the running game the last couple of years. Their pass game has not been excellent, as the Aztecs have struggled with. Very similar squads here, if you're noticing. They will have a new starting quarterback, though. That will likely be Christian Martin. He enters his redshirt sophomore year after being at Maryland for the last 2. He only appeared in 5 games last season, didn't have a ton of play time for Maryland. So he has a lot to prove. I'm not sure if that makes me confident in their pass game, and I think for good reason. You have to show me that you're good. You can't just come into things and just all of a sudden be good. So it remains to be seen. And Christian Martin maybe won't be the starter. For now, it seems like he will be, though. But their running back room, as I said, very good. It's very typical for the Bulldogs to be successful here. Bryson Donaldson returned 600 rushing yards last year, along with Rayshawn Luke, 702 rushing yards last season. So you kind of have the 1-2 punch there for the Bulldogs. On top of that, the offensive line has a ton of experience. That only is going to help your running game. And they only had one receiver, when you look at the pass game last year, average more than 10 yards per reception. That was Josiah Freeman, 12.3 yards per reception. So on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you have faith in the running game. Can you make the pass game work? Well, it remains to be seen. You have returning receivers as well, McClain and Abbott. It adds even more experience to the receiver room, as the Aztecs have coming back. Can you connect those dots? We'll see. Just tons of returners. The only difference for them compared to the Aztecs, when you look at the offensive side of the ball, returning-wise, is that quarterback position, which it doesn't make you super confident in. Usually with a quarterback year 2 in a system like Jaden Denegal will be. Makes you feel a little better about that. Christian Martin entering year 1 with the Bulldogs. Of course, he has experience at Maryland, but Jaden Denegal had experience at Michigan before he came to the Aztecs. So, and Jaden Denegal didn't necessarily do great in the pass game. Did good, but not great. You need to be great if you want to win the Pac-12 this year, especially when you have Maddox Madsen with the Broncos, who will more than likely have a dominant year in the pass game. But let's talk about their defense. The defense had some questions throughout the year. It's not like they gave up a ton of points really throughout the year. They had really good defensive stretches. They had a couple games where the defense didn't go their way. SDSU game, Colorado State game. I look at the Utah State game as well. But other than that, really solid. Low-scoring games across the board when you look at their schedule from last year. And, you know, they had a couple guys leave here and there. I think the question marks are mainly focused on the cornerback position, maybe the pass rushing positions as well. But Nick Benedetto will be entering year 2 with the Bulldogs after a really good year 1 as the defensive coordinator. So he's just looking to build on that. And no matter if he had pieces enter or leave, I think he's going to be successful with that. I don't see it being a huge problem for the Bulldogs this year. I'm not really going to get into all the players exiting and entering because I just have confidence in the defense. I think, you know, you lose a couple guys, of course, to the portal. That's just natural now. And you have guys come in who are looking to prove something. And it goes for all these teams in the Pac-12 conference this year. So I'm not super worried about that. But the best thing about Fresno State this year, the running game and the defense seem to be strong as it was last year. My biggest concern, though, same as the Aztecs for them, can the pass game be a threat? And if it is, watch out for the Bulldogs. It's exactly the same situation as the Aztecs, literally to a T. So, yeah, should be interesting for those two teams. Let's real quickly look at Fresno State's schedule, talk about their toughest, most important game, trap game, easiest stretch, toughest stretch, all the fun stuff. Toughest game, week 1 at USC. You don't have to travel too far from Fresno to get down to LA there, but, I mean, USC is going to just be good. They're going to be dominant. They're going to try and prove they belong a little more in the Big Ten this year. It's going to be a nationally televised game on Fox, 6 p.m., and it's a Friday game. It's the first Pac-12 game for the entire Pac-12. All eyes will be on that one. It's just a tough game. It's a tough game. You maybe will face a ranked opponent in conference play, but other than that, your non-conference isn't too hard afterwards. Your most important game, though, if you're the Bulldogs, at Washington State. It's your first Pac-12 game. It's on the road. It's a later-ish start, 6:30. I'm say later-ish. No, that might even be an Eastern time. Might be an afternoon game. But either way, it's first game in October. You're coming off an easier non-conference schedule outside of the USC game. So you're looking to prove something. You're looking to prove something against a historic Pac-12 team. And if you can beat them, that puts a lot more eyes on you. A lot of people are just going to think of Wazoo and Oregon State as those Pac-12 teams. Well, they want to prove they belong. Your trap game would be on the road against Utah State. After you play San Diego State and Oregon State, you then have to travel to Utah State. And then after the Utah State game, you have to travel to Texas State in San Marcos, Texas. And that game won't be easy for the Bulldogs, and it could have Pac-12 conference implications. So Utah State's a scary one for them. It just is. Can you, you have to be careful. You're playing a tough Oregon State team who's going to be scratching for wins. It's going to be a gritty game on Halloween night for them, too, there. And then you got to travel, hit the road, and you can't look down the road too far on the schedule, or else you might overlook that game. Easiest stretch for the Bulldogs this year, it's that non-conference slate, Sacramento State, San Jose State, and Rice. I look at that, especially if you may pick up that loss to USC, as almost a must-need 3-0 stretch. Rice is not an easy team. No disrespect to Rice, but Sac State, I don't believe they're going to be competitive this year. San Jose State had almost the most guys depart from their team in the transfer portal out of any team in the FBS this year. I don't know if they can figure it out right now. And then Rice at home. It's at home too. So easiest stretch by far. Toughest stretch comes right after that though for the Bulldogs. Like I said, at Wazoo, one of the most important games. Then you come back home, play Boise State, and then back on the road against San Diego State. Easily could go 0-3 in that stretch. I mean, you're talking about three teams who could easily compete for the Pac-12 conference alongside you. Those games become very important, all back to back to back. So a lot to play for the Bulldogs this year, and very similar to the Aztecs when you look at it on paper. So that's San Diego State and Fresno State, two of the remaining four left we got to go. And that brings me to the Rams. Colorado State looking to vastly improve this year after going 2-10. 2-10 last year. Oh, well, they made lots of coaching changes. They bring in Jim Mora. We talked about him on episode 1. Tons of experience. And this is what he needs to fix. Last season, when you look at Colorado State, they ended the year losing the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games of the year. Ooh, no good, no good, no good, no good. So what went wrong? The defense and the offense. Everything went wrong for Colorado State. The Rams finished last in the Mountain West in rushing defense. The defensive front could not get it done. They allowed over 200 yards per game on the rushing end. And on top of that, on the offensive side of the ball, they only averaged 18.3 points per game. That ranked 120th nationally. It's a bad combination, a killing combination for the Rams. Of course, that ultimately led them to the record they had, where they picked up some big losses. You look at the Washington game to start things off, 38-21. You lose to Washington State at home, 20-3 last year. Lose to UTSA before that. Lost to San Diego State, 45-24 at their place. 42-10 against UNLV, where they just gave up over 400 yards. I mean, just not 49-21 against Boise State. 42-21 loss to Air Force to cap off the year. Can't lose to Air Force that badly. Air Force is good, not bad, but not great. However, though, of course, with that comes coaching changes. They bring in Jim Mora, who we talked about, tons of experience with UConn. He brought players with him as well. And the turnover game was a problem for Colorado State last year. And under Mora, the UConn Huskies were the best in the nation when it came to the fewest turnovers lost. So much needed. But will Jim Mora, will he turn that around? We'll see. I think he'll do a lot better than 2-10. I'll tell you that. But there's still a quarterback battle going on as we speak. Darius Curry, who was with the Rams last year. He started some games for them down the final few. He played in that Wyoming game, the New Mexico, Boise State game. Had some good yardage against Boise State, 293 pass yards. But I don't know if Darius Curry is necessarily who you want to go with. He also brought in Kayshawn Farrar, who followed him from UConn. Kayshawn Farrar, he could be good. Or you can go with Haas Haney from Oklahoma State. A lot of guys competing for that spot. And then there's just more and more transfers across the board they bring in as well. They had to rebuild the trenches, D-line and O-line, because your running game on the offensive side wasn't good. Your defensive front last year wasn't good. So everything needed to improve. So on the defensive end, Moore will bring in 2 contributors from UConn, Omar Diomande, the linebacker, and defensive end Stephen Wright. He also gets Caleb Presley from San Jose State, and they were able to keep J.C. Bella. So you have some good defensive returners, guys who came in the portal. How does that work? We'll see. We'll see. I mean, just so many question marks still to be answered. You don't know who your starting quarterback's going to be, which could be good, could be bad the way you look at it. But the best thing about Colorado State going into this year is just Jim Mora and the defensive reinforcements they bring in. The defense had to be improved. It was so bad last year, so bad. Every Colorado State fan knows it. It was brutal to watch. So if you can hold games to a lot less than what you did, you got to feel a little better that they have a shot this year. And if your offense can figure it out and build the trenches up a little more, it's a good feeling. Your biggest concern, though, is just how things mesh and execute. It's just so much change in the program. So much change. Coaches, players, scheme. I mean, that's a lot of change. We see this almost all the time. Year one with a lot of changes doesn't necessarily go that great. It's kind of just a rebuilding year, I think, for the Rams. And when you look at their schedule, it's not necessarily easy either. Not a very favorable schedule. Toughest game, BYU at home. That's just such a hard game for Colorado State this year. Their most important game, Oregon State, I think. A team that I think they'll have a better shot against, especially since they're going through a rebuild as well with Jamarcus Shepard. And it gives you a chance to get things going just in Pac-12 conference play. First Pac-12 game as well. Your trap game, I believe, is at Utah State. That comes between games against San Diego State and Boise State. So 2 tough teams. You get at home, though, but then you have to travel between those 2 games. Not far, but to play Utah State, who's going to have a really electric offense more than likely. We'll talk about that in a sec. But it's just one of those games that meshes tough between a lot of other tough games. Their toughest stretches to end the year, Boise State, Washington State, and Fresno State, with possibly having to play Texas State again as your flex game to end the year. Those last 4 games of the year could be just brutal. Just brutal. 2 road games, Wazoo, Fresno State back-to-back, and then Texas State possibly back at home for the flex. That's just a lot. That's a lot for a Colorado State team, just looking for as many wins as they can get this year. And the easiest stretch, I think, will come right at the start of the year. Wyoming, Southern Utah, and BYU. And I say that just because, yeah, I mean, you almost have to pick up wins against Wyoming and Southern Utah. And Wyoming is not a walkover game. It's just not. It's a tough start, too. I mean, this schedule is just brutal. I know I talked about that Oregon State schedule being brutal. Colorado State's going to have a tough year and just a grind of a year. I like that Jim Moore is running the show. Just will he get things in check year one? I'm not. It's just so much change. A lot of change you got to work around, and a lot that the team needed to improve on. Will they improve on all those things? Yes, they will improve in aspects of the game. Will that lead to necessarily a bowl game? I don't know. I think they may fall short of that this year, but I think they'll do a lot better than 2-10. I think they'll pick up a few more wins than that. Okay, final Pac-12 team, Utah State. I am very interested to see what Utah State does this year. I kind of see them as a Texas State. What can you improve on? Now, last year they go 6-7. They lose in the bowl game to Washington State in the Idaho Potato Bowl, and they had a tough schedule last year. They did not have it easy. They played Texas A&M. They played Vanderbilt in non-conference. They had a double overtime loss to UNLV last year. They had a 1-point loss to Boise State at home last year. Their blowout games were Hawaii, where they lost by a lot, and same with New Mexico, both on the road. So Bronco Mendenhall in his second year is really looking to build off a year where it wasn't entirely bad. It wasn't entirely bad. A bowl game is a success in my eyes for Utah State making it there with the schedule they had. It was not easy. But your offense last year was led by a very experienced quarterback, a senior Bryson Barnes, who just was terrific. It was really, when you look at Utah State's season, I think that the defensive inconsistency was their biggest issue. Because you have really great games as a defense, and then other games you get blown out. Granted, some teams were harder to play than others, but it seemed like the offense was always putting up numbers. There was really, when I look at it on paper, one game they didn't put up numbers, and that was New Mexico, where they got blown out 33-14. Other than that, defense maybe just got a little bit away from you. Of course, Bryson Barnes is not coming back as he graduated, so they will go with McKay Hillstead, who, funny enough, was with the Aggies, 3 years ago and played for BYU the last 2 years, comes back to Utah State, has Javen Jacobs returning as a back with a strong returning offensive line. Good experience across the board for the Aggies. I'm not questioning McKay Hillstead as quarterback either. He sat under a good program, good quarterbacks coming through there, and I think he could do a good job, especially with Bronco Mendenhall, who had a pretty elite defense. With Bronco Mendenhall, who had a pretty elite offense last year. So I think what's most important is fixing the defense. They did not change the defensive coordinator. They do stick with Nick Howell, who has worked with Bronco Mendenhall for 18 years now. They still have some good defensive pieces still. Brevin Hamlin, who's on the Bronco Nagurski award watch list. Bo Miley, a defensive lineman. 5 returning starters on defense. A lot to look forward to on the defensive end when it comes to improving. So you look at the biggest thing to look forward to this season for the Aggies, and you think of just the offensive firepower. I think it'll be there. It's kind of like Texas State. That offense is going to be there. Do I think it'll be as elite as Texas State may be on the offensive side this year? Probably not. Texas State's going to have a really scary threat on the offensive end. But their biggest concern is the defense. Year 2 of that scheme with Nick Howell, you're kind of buying into that getting fixed. Now, if it does, they're going to be good. And when I compare their offense to Texas State, the defense for Utah State gives me more hope than the Texas State defense kind of does. Which I think is good for them. So I wouldn't say they're a wild card team this year to win the Pac-12, but I think they can be very competitive, and they could prove to show a lot of upsets this season, which takes me to their schedule. They have a tough non-conference schedule, as do a lot of Pac-12 teams this year, but their toughest game is on the road at Utah, who's ranked 21st going into the year, and that comes after a tough game against UW. On the road as well. Now, you could say UW's their toughest game, but you look at that Utah game, it's probably has a lot more meaning. That loss to Washington, if it is a loss, it's not the end-all, be-all. That could be just a more critical game to win because Utah's on the road. That's a loud environment. It's a rivalry game. I think that's going to be tough, and it's played in the afternoon. Not easy. Their most important game, though, I would say comes against Washington State at home. Can you take down a historically Pac-12 solid team right after you have to travel to Boise State and play Boise State? And if you lose to Boise State, that game becomes even more important at home. Their trap game, I would say, is the one against Colorado State at home, as it was for Colorado State. I think those two could have a lot on the line in Pac-12 standings there. that's a game where things could swing one way or another. Their easiest stretch, I would not say anything. It's kind of like Oregon State. They don't really have it easy. Their non-conference is hard. You start with Idaho State, which should be a win. You play Troy, which isn't necessarily easy. Boise State, Wazoo, Texas State, not easy. Colorado State could be good. Fresno State, San Diego State, Oregon State on the road. Ugh, just hard. It's just hard. Their hardest stretch, though, is that end-of-year stretch. Fresno State at SDSU, at Oregon State, and then their flex game right now would be scheduled against Boise State at home, which couldn't be easy either. Now, I don't know if they'd play each other for that flex game, of course. It's all up in the air, but that's who they are set to play, is the word. It'll be tough. It'll be tough. We'll see how things go, but a lot to look forward to in Pac-12 play, and that will wrap up all our team previews for the Pac-12 season. I kept it kind of short because I think there's some teams that deserve the focus and some teams who you just look at on paper and it's going to be tough. It's just going to be tough. There's too many changes. You sometimes have to wait for things to be just seen on the field. And I really see that with Colorado State this year, Oregon State this year, Texas State's defense, Utah State's defense, how things click around the board. Washington State has their questions, of course, both offensively and a little bit defensively, even though I trust Trent Bray. And San Diego State and Fresno State have the pass game questions. Boise State, they look really solid. Can they keep it going? Can they keep it rolling with a tougher schedule, I'd say, more than likely this year than the previous year? So a lot of question marks. I think the Pac-12 is really up for play, and that's what makes it fun. And that's why one of these teams could probably go to the college football playoffs. And I think non-conference play is just so important for all these teams. If you can come out of non-conference play for any of these teams with a 500 record or a 3-1 record, or hey, maybe even undefeated, you're giving the Pac-12 a good look. This is going to be a great year. It's going to be a great year. But again, thank you all for tuning in. We finished up the team previews, though. San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and Utah State today. If you didn't watch part one, we covered Washington State, we covered Boise State, we covered, Oregon State, and then lastly, Texas State in that part one video. But that's the end of part two. That's the end of team previews. Coming soon, though, my predictions for the season, win-loss totals, maybe give you some over-unders if you want some betting advice. I know I have my bets in. I'll share those with everybody. Just fun year. Again, though, thank you all for tuning in to Saturdays Out West, an edition of the Jack Power Show. I will see you on the next one. Make sure to subscribe. That helps me out a ton. I really would appreciate the support. And go follow me on social media, Jack Power Show. I have it on Instagram. I have it on TikTok even. I'm not a big TikTok guy, but hey, maybe go check that out. That's always fun. And we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, interact with me, maybe post some questions, and I can answer those in later videos.